Please clap.
Our next speaker is a doctor of education who has consulted on an impressive number of youth education initiatives, collaborating with innovators like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Sam Walton, and Jeff Bezos. He has 2 months of classroom experience. Please welcome Dr. Giles DeRay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that warm welcome and that wonderful introduction. I am Giles DeRay. I am an education specialist with over 20 years of experience in the field of novel pedagogical research. And yes, I have worked with all those big names, and I've also worked directly with kids for a few weeks. And so I've got the entire breadth of education experience under my belt. So believe me, when I come here to you today to tell you that I come bearing both bad news and good news. How about the bad news first? American education is in crisis. Kids are failing classes at a rate of 75% nationwide. Kids are dropping out of high school, middle school, elementary school, kindergarten, and pre-K at a rate approaching 90%, I'm going to go ahead and say. That's how bad it is in America. And worst of all, we are falling way behind our main rival in the geopolitical stage, China. China is using radical new approaches to education. Everything from banning children from playing more than 3 hours of video games a week to using labor camps as extracurricular activities. Bold, radical new approaches that they are really pulling ahead of us. And, you know, no matter which way you slice that pangolin pie, they are going to overtake us well before the midpoint of the 21st century. And they're going to paratroop in here with their armies of highly educated, highly specialized child soldiers and take away all of our freedoms if we don't start fighting back on the education front. But here's where the good news comes in. I and a consortium of billionaires have been working diligently on a bold new experiment in radical new pedagogical approaches that's going to transform American education. Thank you, thank you. And what we've done is start an education camp in an undisclosed location in the Pacific Northwest. And at the core of the camp's values and approach to education is the concept of coopetition. It's teaching kids cooperation for the purpose of competition. A bold, radical new concept that no one has ever thought of before. Let me tell you how it works. So here are our kids. They've arrived at our camp in the beautiful mountains of Washington or possibly Oregon or maybe even Canada. I'm not at liberty to say. For their safety, of course. For their own protection. Because it's all about protecting our posterity, isn't it? So, with funding from sources as widely varying as Bill Gates, Peter Thiel, Jeff Bezos, George Soros, and other ones that will remain nameless, we have established a camp that infuses the spirit of coopetition at every level. Kids are taught the principles of cooperating with other small groups of kids in order to compete with other small groups of kids in a way that will prepare them for the rigors of the real world. We start off with some fun team building activities. As you can see here, we teach a little bit of leadership skills, as you can see from the one here, helping coordinate, everyone else carrying the kayak to the lake. Or maybe it's a canoe. I don't know. I'm not one of those outdoorsy rich guys. I'm indoorsy myself, so I've never actually been to the location, but I've read all the reports and things are going great. We move on to other smaller team building exercises where you can see we do everything from what you just saw, kids working coopetiting in large groups, to coopetitioning in smaller duos, as you can see here. You see, we have a foot race here where one kid has to carry the other kid. And it's an important, this is in particular, is an important skill for them to learn towards the end of the camp program when we have our coopetition tournament, and I'll talk more about that later. Here we have an exercise in which kids have to push some boards over balls. You have to pick up the ball from the back and move them toward the front of the board, so that it's much like how the large cut stones were rolled up to the construction sites of the Great Pyramids by slaves. And here we have one of the more advanced coopetition activities, with the kids actually playing cat's cradle with, this is actually filament thin garrote wire. It's very sharp, and so they have to be very careful. And this is the degree to which we've got to compete with China. We've got to start toughening our kids up and teaching them the skills and especially the coopetition principles that they're going to need to compete in a harsh geopolitical landscape. And it's not all fun and games, of course. At some point, we have to bring the kids back into a classroom, and they use the coopetition skills that they're taught in the more fun activities and apply it to academic pursuits. As you can see they're doing here, they're teamed up, and they're coopetitioning with and against each other, doing, it looks like a little bit like math, a little bit like English, I'm not sure. It looks like they're tackling both reading and math at the same time to really get these kids prepared for their SATs and ACTs. And this is the level of coopetition that we've got to get to comparate with China. Ooh, China. All right. And here we have, this is one of our instructors, Mr. Yamamura, instructing the kids on what they can expect from the coopetition tournament that is at the end of coopetition camp, and will determine which kids truly absorb the values of coopetition. Pay no mind to the armed guards. It's all for the children's protection. And here we have it, the start of the coopetition tournament at the end of coopetition camp. It's a lot of fun, but it is a very tough competition. And believe me, these kids are going to want to make the cut, because it's going to determine who gets to really lead in the world. Who really gets to compete in the world? Who really gets to live in the world? Now, this is an amazing innovation that actually comes from a collaboration between Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos. These are our coopetition collars that each of our campers is fitted with as they go into the coopetition tournament, just in order to track their movements, record their record any sounds around them, what they're saying to each other. We're using these coopetition collars to collect data and to ensure that all of our campers are, shall we say, comparating with the coopetition program. We want to make sure we really ensure comparation with what we're doing here because it's for their own good. And this, you see here, what happens if a student tries to run out of the bounds of the coopetition tournament, or if they choose not to do any of the required tasks to win the tournament. Because, folks, we've got to start competing with China. We've got to start getting really tough on these kids. There's also they start off with a fun activity where they have to solve a maze. And as you can see, doesn't that just sound like so much fun? I would love to try this sometime without, wearing a coopetition collar, of course. And with, being able to call in a helicopter should I be able to not make it through the maze, which does not have any food or water or medical supplies. And, at first, the campers are a little disoriented because they come from such pampered backgrounds here in America that they don't really know how to process what's happening to them, and so they're bewildered. They're crying. Some of them are crying. Some of them are complaining about their anxiety and depression and things like that. And if we're going to be able to compete with China in the 21st century, we cannot allow our children to show that kind of weakness. But some of them remember the principles of coopetition, half of which is cooperation. And so eventually what happens with these campers is they start breaking off into little groups, and they start harnessing in-group and out-group dynamics to their, some to their detriment, but others to their benefit. As you can see here, we have two of the campers comparating together as another team lurks in the bushes ready to strike. Comparation, coopetition, that's the name of the game. Here, and some of them will reach in a crisis moment, a moment where they have to decide, do I want to help my fellow camper or do I want to strangle him? Because life is all about making decisions like that. In order to compete and thrive in a global neoliberal capitalist economy, you have to know when to be empathetic and when to have that killer instinct. You have to be able to switch those things on and off in a way that's both more and less than human. And our coopetition camp, which we are in talks with state legislatures and city governments all over America already to start implementing nationwide, these camps will teach kids those valuable skills so that we can have a ground war with China. That is the end game. And eventually you see that when kids apply the principles of coopetition, it gives them this amazing confidence, at least the ones who are still left standing. And the ones who are still left standing, they're standing tall, as you can see here. This is a camper who has fully internalized the principles of coopetition, and she's looking like she's going to make it to the very top of the heap. Because, you know, one thing else that's important to remember is that the wheat must be separated from the chaff. We cannot afford to have any dead weight in this country if we are to take on China in a economic, cyber, and ground war that will last the entire length of the 21st century until one power is ultimately supreme and in its ascendancy, one way or the other. This has to be settled, folks. And the way we do that is with radical new approaches to education, like the coopetition program. And here, these are our 4 finalists from our very first coopetition tournament. The final challenge that you see here is a pop quiz on 18th century French history administered with cattle prod. Because, you know, it's all fun and games letting the kids run around and shoot each other with bows and arrows and spear each other and kill each other with knives. But eventually, you got to get them back into the classroom because academics, that's what it's all about. That's the end goal. And here we have Jennifer, our valedictorian and sole survivor of the first, but certainly not the last, coopetition tournament. So, coopetition tournaments are going to be coming to a school district near you, and we strongly encourage all of you to get out there, talk to your state representatives, your school boards, mayors and city councils, Congress, and the president, and show your support for this radical new approach to American pedagogy that is going to allow us to create a Pax Americana that shall reign for 1,000 years. Thank you.